What's up, Parrot Nation? Gary Hootenholla here, and welcome to another episode of the Spooktacular Podcast. What's up, Tommy? What's up, Joe?
Hello.
All right, so we are back, and now we're going to get into the subject matter of ghosts, okay? I know a lot of people have been waiting for that, and, it's like we kind of tiptoed a little bit around different subject matters, from black-eyed children to mermaids to the whole vampire thing was super cool. If you watched our last two podcasts, Tommy did an amazing job interviewing these two living vampires. And it was absolutely amazing. Tommy, do you want to just do a quick recap? Because you did talk to one of them, right? After the show?
Yeah.
Watch it?
What'd you say, sir?
So didn't one of the vampires that we interviewed, they watched the one show and they really liked it, right?
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. The one who Marcia, who hooked up the whole interview with the actual living vampire. Yeah, she said that she watched it and she really enjoyed it. She's like, I think the subject's great. She goes, you're a really interesting person to hear about this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think she really enjoyed it. And actually, I told her about our podcast tonight, even though where she's from, it's late at night. But she said she's definitely going to watch it tomorrow. So, I mean, we got some more viewers, and it's amazing how just like, making that connection with just one person, can open up a lot of opportunities to work with her again. She said there's a lot of topics that she's really interested in. And I said, well, flood me with them. I go, anything you want to hear about, let me know, and I'll show them to, I call you the curator host, and, we'll see what we can make happen. So, I mean, she really likes them. I don't know if the other lady has watched them. That I don't really know. She's kind of hard to get a hold of. But I know Marcia has definitely seen them. And she really liked the vampire one. So that was really good. That was like a big compliment right there.
Awesome. And yeah, I say it was definitely interesting. So tonight we're going to be talking the modern day poltergeist. All right. So, it's funny when you hear about poltergeist activity, it comes in different varieties, okay? From the old school ways of the poltergeist, from being when a young woman comes into her own in her adolescence, and they release a poltergeist into the environment, to the modern day poltergeist, which is absolutely totally different. What we find in the paranormal field. I can tell you, as being a paranormal researcher and doing this 20 plus years, I have seen the evolution of a poltergeist, for myself. From when I first started doing research way back then to now in modern day time, it's a lot different in a lot of ways. It's an evolving door when it comes to this subject. But tonight, what we did is we brought in Rev Joe, and he's part of my paranormal team, the Tri-State New York Paranormal Society. And do you want to give a quick description about yourself?
Well, I'm an ordained spiritualist minister and certified medium, and I've been doing this kind of thing for probably about 30 years now, as far as being a certified medium. And so I'm also a metaphysician. I study metaphysics, and I'm also an ordained metaphysical minister as well. So I know a little bit about everything, I guess. And I think that's why, I call him the boss, but Mr. Hootenholla has me on the team. So, I'm so happy to be on the team, because you learn something every time you go into a case or an old building or someone's home, and you just don't know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen. It's a journey. Every day is a journey. No matter what we do in the paranormal field, it's a journey.
Yeah, and that's what's great about the paranormal field, because it's, as a lot of the people that are watching the show are into the paranormal or into Bigfoot or cryptids or ufology. And I guess at the end of the day, it is a journey. It's a journey for yourself, what your own answers are. It doesn't really matter at the, overall what a lot of other people think as far as what your personal self wants out of that subject matter. We can learn so much from each other, but each one of us is in this for a specific reason. And, you know, once again, it's in a spiritual journey in a lot of ways, the scientific journey in a lot of ways, and it's enlightenment of oneself. I believe it's self-growth in some way, shape, or form, whatever you need for yourself to get out of the paranormal. And it's really cool that we can do this, and we have the opportunity to do this on a very high professional level. So let's get right into it. So Tommy, let's talk about Poltergeist. So go ahead with your whole synopsis of the whole phenomena itself.
So Poltergeist, just based on my research and talking with, there was a group I was talking with like back when my interest in this kind of like redeveloped, and there were like little things that were happening around my house, so I got a hold of them. And you know, a lot of the things they mentioned were poltergeist, and I knew a poltergeist as a noisy spirit, which in German is what it means. However, it is not a spirit in terms of what we think as a spirit is. I believe a poltergeist is just psychic energy that builds up in you and somehow emits itself into your physical environment, therefore causing reactions. So, you know, when you're seeing most people see it in the movies, so we'll use that as an example. When you're seeing in the movies somebody is very enraged, very just irate about something, a window breaks or a cup flies off the table and hits the wall, but nothing is physically touching that. That would be what I believe it if I can say what it looks like, is like a buildup of static energy, and we are electrical beings, I suppose. We have an electrical current that goes through us, and we know this by science. And I believe what happens is when all of that energy builds up, it needs somewhere to go, like energy always does. It has to combust, it has to de-stress, and that's what I believe happens. It's just a huge combustion of our aura, and it can be so strong that it can actually affect physical items. So basically, psychic energy that you almost in a way have no control over, in a sense, that just interacts with the environment.
Joe, you want to add more to that?
Okay. Well, to me, as a spiritualist, we believe in the afterlife, but as also a medium studying mediumship and communicating with spirits, I also believe that there are things such as a ghost on an entity level. However, there's also things such as the psychokinetic type of thing that could happen that is emanating from an individual from a perspective of that individual due to a certain thing that's happening with that person. So there are two different things that we can talk about, and that's why it's important to investigate what we're talking about here. Are we talking about a PK type of issue, or are we talking about the actual type of an entity that is manifesting? Because whatever we're talking about is an energy. So whether we're talking about something that is a disembodied spirit, or it's an energy that is created by an individual that emanates from their subconscious mind, that creates the quote knocking spirit, or the poltergeist, which it comes from the German. So I can give you actual examples of what an actual noisy ghost could be. So, and I'm sure Gary could too. So, and experiences that both of us have had. So there are differences. So we have to look at it from two different perspectives. But my perspective is it could be a psychic level thing that someone creates it in their mind, or it actually is an entity that we need to look at and say, was it a disembodied spirit, or is it another type of entity such as an elemental, or is it something that is an outer worldly type of thing that is coming into the environment?
Now, see, now I look at things from a scientific way and a logical way. And, you know, when we investigate the modern day poltergeist, and we're getting into the modern day stuff, one thing that I've noticed is that, once again, I do believe it's some kind of psychic phenomena, some kind of PK energy, things like that. We do have that point. But let's look at it from a logical standpoint. Most people that have poltergeists in their house are very stressed out people. Okay, we live in a world of stress now. All right, about 99% of the clients that we go to their houses, and Joe will back this up because Joe's part of my team, we deal with PK and we deal with poltergeist phenomena. We don't actually deal with hauntings. We deal with a person that's in the house. With that being said, what I mean by the modern day poltergeist: money problems, relationship problems, kid problems, virtual school now for all of us parents that have kids and have to do virtual school. It's a stress dealing with that. We have all sorts of work problems outside, whatever. We are one big ball of stress. And one of the main places we unload all that stress is in your home. So once again, coming from that standpoint, these are the things that we do see. On top of that, mental illness has a part to play in this. People that have PTSD, people that have personality disorders, people that have a lot of stress in their life or have had stress in their life, they also create these energies that they release into the environment that they don't even know what they're doing because they're imploding. And that's energy. Everything has an energy. Everything has a frequency. You'll hear me talk about frequency all the time because I'm a big person on frequency. But once they unload that into the environment, boom, you now end up getting poltergeist activity. And 9 times out of 10, it's a human that causes it. So if I look at it from that logical standpoint, and I look at it from a scientific standpoint, I look at it as it's a person that has some kind of built up, like, either mental illness of some sort. And when I say illness, I'm not saying, anything per se bad, but I'm saying, PTSD, stress disorders, depression, things like that, which are classified as mental illnesses. And then these are the type of people that we see create poltergeist activity. So that's my take on from the scientific standpoint of it.
Can I back up a minute?
Go ahead.
What I was trying to get at is that there are times that people can have the emotional state and maybe a physical state, maybe they're on certain medications, where they can bring in certain types of energies, which are a combination of the PK type of phenomenon, and also bring into the environment entities that normally wouldn't be in the environment. So there is that occasion where they could bring in, quote, spirits, if you will, from nearby environments that normally would not be in their environment, along with what they've already created from maybe their own mind, from either their emotional state, their mental state, or their living state. So there are those times when the combination brings in the entities that I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I mean, it does. I mean, the thing with the poltergeist activity in general, it could be connected to multiple different things, but 9 times out of 10, it does seem to be a person.
It also can happen after someone has recently transitioned or recently died in a family. where the energies of that individual are still close to the earth plane where they have not yet left. And they're still clinging to what they know. They're clinging to their home. They're clinging to their belongings. And they may still be around trying to find out where they are, especially if they died a tragic death or they're kind of not ready. They weren't ready yet to leave.
And that's through investigation. Those are things that we would
Right.
have
That's
to
what we would be investigating.
Yep, exactly. So Tommy, so we were talking about earlier the Fox sister, sorry. And so going a little bit about that, because, you know, once again, with Joe being a spiritualist and you being a parahistorian, there's so much into just that subject and that story. So go ahead and, you know, get into depth in that a little bit.
Well, so the Fox sisters were 3 sisters from New York. And what they did was, of course, disproved and was told that they were actually the ones causing the acts that they claim were happening. What they did was they would sit in a room and they would either channel spirits or talk to them. But what happened was, what the family noticed is there were knocks going on in the house. Doors would close, furniture would move. But mainly what everyone knows the case as is the knocks that they would hear on the wall. So what would happen is the girls would sit in a room and they would tell the spirit, you know, for yes or for whatever answer, whatever question they were after, whatever subject, they would tell the spirit to either knock 3 times for yes, maybe knock once for, you know, I'm not sure, or basically just a bunch of code. So they were getting responses and they were investigated. They were seen as frauds, naturally, because, you know, in that day, spiritualism didn't exist yet. Those girls were actually one of the catalysts for the spiritualism movement in the 1800s. People started to try to recreate what the girls were doing, and they couldn't. So it's when they said, you know, you 3 are frauds. You know, we concluded the girls are doing this. There's no spirit, there's nothing. That is how the time went in the 1800s, because there was no way to prove it. Like nowadays, I think we have a little bit more to prove a paranormal experience, but still I think it's still very far away from us to understand, why does it happen? You know, how did these 3 girls get together and make these knocks on the wall that they're not physically doing? There was never a ghost seen by anybody. Her parents would hear the knocks and they assumed that it was a ghost. Bring in very early parapsychologists, and just to conclude that it was just a bunch of BS, that the girls were making things up. They were the ones doing the knocking. And I hear that a lot in a lot of poltergeist accounts of poltergeist energy phenomenon, because, you know, you'll have parapsychologists come into an environment and they will do a controlled experiment, and they'll see things flying across the floor, but they don't want to admit that they believe this is in fact paranormal, for fear of ridicule, whatever negative outlook they had on the paranormal. So everybody was a fraud. But nowadays, there's a little bit more. I don't think you're going to be called a fraud as much as you would have in the spiritualism days. But that's the Fox sisters, and pretty much in like a nutshell is them. Now, the one I know that everybody knows about is the Amityville haunting. So the Amityville haunting was, and I was wrong before our show, it was not DeFeo who killed the family, it was Lutz who killed the family. Mr. Lutz would hear all these voices in his head, And he just one day, really one night, he woke up, took his shotgun, blew his kids away, his dog, his wife, eventually shot himself. The family that moved in after the Lutzes was the DeFeos, who were actually picking up on all that negative energy. And they said one of the biggest things was the walls would bleed. Now, I don't know if this is really poltergeist. I mean, I guess you could say that it very well could be. But why would the walls bleed after, and this is like a question for Joe, why would the walls bleed after the murder happened? And what do you think that the blood represented, or what do you think it is as like a psychic substance? Like, would we call it ectoplasm? Would we call it just the emotion that this guy felt? I mean, it seems kind of weird that after a murder happened, you would see the walls start trickling down.
Well, there are many counts of things bleeding. Like in the Catholic Church, there are statues where saints' eyes would tear blood, or pictures would bleed. You have people who manifested the stigmata in their hands and parts of their body. So as far as a wall bleeding or other parts of the house, manifesting anything still is created by energy. So if there was blood or some kind of a substance coming from the walls, if they didn't investigate it and on a scientific level and test what was coming from the wall, we're not going to be able to know what it really was. Was it blood? Was it some kind of color or condensation coming through the walls, mixing with paint from years past? So we would have to investigate it, of course, but you could probably make paint peel if you want to. Uri Geller made forks bend. You can make things happen with your mind, just like making a pendulum move. Gary and I can do it. So why can't you make things come through a wall, make bubbles in paint or wallpaper happen? So anything can really happen if the person has that type of an ability to create that kind of energy. As far as, I can see, but if it hasn't been investigated what that substance was,
there's nothing really on it.
Substance was.
Yeah, no, I don't remember hearing if anybody actually went up and touched it. All I would hear is the accounts of walls bleeding.
It could be his eyes. It could have been his eyes saying that it was a color of blood. Mm. It may not have been thick like blood. It could have been a light color or a pale red or a pink coming through. Mm. He could have thought a color like blood coming through the wall and manifested through his subconscious mind and created that color coming through the wall.
Huh. Wow. Yeah, well,
it's possible.
That's why I asked.
Weird things can happen that we don't even know that have happened, that have possibly have happened because people are afraid to say that they've seen it for fear of being crazy.
Now, do we believe
on top of that, everybody views things differently?
Correct. Poltergeist, do we believe that it only happens when an individual is in the environment, or can that energy remain and still continue to knock things over long after a person has left? And I have a story for it, and that's why I'm asking. Can the PK, the psychokinetic energy, actually just stay there until it just eventually fizzles out?
Well, look at it from, I'm not a physics expert or an engineer, but if things have what is called a half-life, wouldn't things eventually kind of dissipate?
Mhm.
So the energy level in a home could dissipate, or if there is a residual energy in the home that was caused, in my situation as a spiritualist, I'm going to say, from my experience and from what I have learned, if it's residual energy from an entity or from some sort of an action that took place that was a live action thing, like a death or an accident, the residual energy is probably going to stay for a very, very, very long time. If it was created from PK, from someone's mind, from an emotional state, I'm going to say that it's going to dissipate after a time, or after the person moves away from that location, that it's going to go away. Now, Gary might have something different to say on that.
Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate on that. It's perfectly said. You know me too well. That, we do. Now, here's the clincher on that, is that was theorized. This is all theory, obviously. Theory's the
Right.
word of the day. But when we, hypothetically and logically speaking, someone moves out of the house that has, PK released the poltergeist. They're no longer in the house. A new family moves into the house. Depending on that new family's energy, how they present themselves, are they negative? Or do they fight? Do they bicker? Do they do all those things? In my opinion, because I've seen it happen, is that poltergeist then will still stay in the environment because it's still getting energy. So you basically have created a residual something. Okay, and I'm just going to put something because I don't know what it is. But you've created a residual something from a person that lived in the house or apartment before. We see this a lot in apartment buildings. Think about it. Once again, when you live in an apartment building, you live in a place, in a building that has multiple people. That poltergeist does not need to stay within those walls. That's one thing that people don't think about. The person downstairs from you could create a poltergeist, but that doesn't mean that poltergeist has to stay in his apartment. What's the rules that say that? There is no rules. It can go upstairs. It can go next door. It can go anywhere it wants. It's energy. It's frequency. We are tethered by walls. Energy and frequency is not. So we need to also remember that. So you move out of a location and another family moves in. If they're giving energy to the environment, which we all give energy to the environment every single day, depending on if that energy matches the poltergeist activity that was already still in that location, it can still stay there. Now, I agree with Joe that after time, those energies normally dissipate. So probably 9 times out of 10, if someone moves out, it's going to solve the problem. But that 1% time is in when we're being called, because what they may think is a ghost in the house, really at the end of the day, may just been PK energy left over from somebody that moved, someone in the house that moved out of it, things like that. So there's a lot of like leeway with those kind of things, because we don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, we honestly don't know. But if you think logic, does energy die?
You can't create
Can you really destroy
it. Can't create it nor destroy it.
You can't create or destroy energy.
It only takes form.
So if we're dealing with, correct. So if we're dealing with a form of energy, then how do you really destroy it? You don't.
But it can change form.
It can change form and go dormant. Correct. So it may change form and it may go dormant. But just because it's dormant doesn't mean that at one point in time it can't come back. Because we don't have that understanding of that.
Mhm.
So to answer your question, like you said, you're getting it from two sides. It's a yes and no. It really is. Like, it's all situational. It's really situational.
Yeah,
So
we
I have a
had
question. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah?
And then I got a question.
Oh no, yeah, no, do the questions. That's fine.
Okay. All right. So we got a question from Mike. He had to pop out. He stopped by during work. But he writes, here's a question. He goes, how do you protect yourself from those bad spirits? He goes, do you have an object like a cross or something similar? Do you perform a ritual before you go investigate? Joe, do you want to explain that?
First of all, you have to look at what is it that you personally believe in, what you were brought up to believe in, and what is it that you're trying to do, first of all, and where are you going with this? So protection is something that is a personal type of a thing that we look for a lot. A lot of people look for protection. So if you come from a Christian background and you're looking at the cross as protection because you come from a background where you believe or believed that Jesus is your Lord and Savior, then from that frame of reference, then you would do something from that frame of reference. You might have a prayer to the Archangel Gabriel. There are several things that could be recommended that you could do. If you're coming from another type of a spiritual path, then there are things that you could do from that, whether it could be a pagan or a non-Christian type of way of protection. But the most important thing that everyone needs to remember is with this idea of protection is the idea of intent. What is the intent of this idea of protection? What is it that you believe that you're protecting yourself from? What is it in the environment that you believe? And belief is the most important thing. And what is it that you believe that you are fearful of? Because fear is the most important thing that really gets people. It can get you into trouble if you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, if you have a mindset of trying to bring things into an environment or do things that you know nothing about. So there are many people who are into various types of things out there and different types of things, sort like the dark arts, and we could go into that a lot. There's Wicca, there's witchcraft, white witchcraft, black witchcraft, Satanism, and Satanism isn't necessarily an evil demonic thing, and we could talk about that for hours, about demons and all kinds of evil kinds of things. So it all depends on your intent and what you're looking for. So as far as protection, there are many types of prayers. You can go into a Celtic realm. You can go into a pagan realm, because there are different ways to go about that. And we could have a workshop on that down the road as far as protection and intent. So, but if you have something that you're worried about, you can email Tri-City New York Paranormal Society, use that email. And if you have a specific question, it'll be forwarded to myself or Gary, and we'll try to help you out.
Yep. And Will Carr, who he kind of says it, wrong one. Will Carr says it. He goes, so it would be safe to say that you need the feeling of protection more than an object. And I agree with that. That's what I use. All right. When I'm doing any kind of paranormal work, I walk in and I do my thing. It's what you feel. All right. Now people bring objects, yes, but because you put that feeling in an object. But like I tell my crew, what happens if you forget that object when you go to an investigation? Then what? You're kind of, what are you, SOL? No. At the end of the day, sometimes we forget things, but it's not obvious. It's not the object that's protecting you. It's your belief system. It's what you're putting into the environment. It's those kind of things that will protect you. So it's more of that feeling, because the power of belief is one of the most important things we have. So
and
always
the power
use
of
that.
knowledge.
And the power of knowledge.
And power, it's what you know as well, and how well prepared you are with knowledge, because knowledge is truly power over belief. And that's the problem with a lot of people. They have a lot of distorted and misguided beliefs from centuries of untruth. So you have to look at it that way. You could, some people look at a crystal or a quartz or some sort of a favorite gemstone that has a particular energetic quality that they feel comfortable with. That could be their source of protection in a metaphysical sense. So if that is what feels comfortable to you, then that is your intent, that is your object. And there are many rituals that you could use as well as backup in certain situations. And there's nothing wrong with having a certain ritual as well, or an affirmation along with your intent. And that's fine.
Yep. So I hope that answers that, Mike. Now, Jay has a cool question, and here we go with this. Back to poltergeist activity. He goes, in a lot of cases, poltergeists are said to be created unintentionally from high levels of stress. He goes, but do you think it's possible for someone to purposely create or manifest poltergeist activity? So what he's saying is, we always hear about, us releasing during stressful times, like you say, the young adolescent girl when she comes into her own, and then they release their emotions in the environment, the German poltergeist, as we like to say. But do you think it's possible that someone can actually create enough PK on a intelligent, an intellectual level, I guess, to then release it to make it happen?
Well, actually, I think it is possible, and I'm going to go back to maybe a case that we did a while ago, and something that I experienced at someone's home that was like on a farm, in a farmhouse situation, where the child actually created the energy and manifested it, because they kind of willed something to happen. They willed some sort of energy around them as they were playing with things in a playful way, and created these, I would say, mischievous sorts of PK sorts of activity. And in one case, it was a young boy. And then in this other situation, it was a young girl in the home, because she did not like her mother's choice of new spouse. And
so it's almost like they created like their own invisible friends, per se.
They created their own invisible friends and made them mischievous friends. They created them. And as far as, like to create like jokester kinds of activities in the home to make things happen, to make the parents go kind of, wacky, like what's going on here in this house.
Yep. And then, I mean, this goes right into what Will Carr just said. Will Carr just said, he goes, positive brings positive and negative brings negative. So this is another perfect example of that. So we have, two little children who just are not happy with their home situation, end up creating their own make-believe friends. And because they are not happy with the situation, they end up creating poltergeist activities. And then once again, boom, now you're dealing with those kind of things. I don't know if Joe agrees, but I always find the children poltergeist to be really much harder to deal with. Only because with an adult, it's a lot easier with an adult to understand the activity that's happening, the family dynamic, the dynamic of the household, things like that, the dynamic of their life. When you deal with children, though, it's a whole different set of scenarios. Do you agree with that? Like it's hard. It's a lot harder.
You're on the right track, because think about it. We were all kids and young at one point, in this story of like make believe, having friends, or you're playing with the girls playing with their Barbies and their dolls, and the guys with their trucks and their I remember with the little green army guys and the GI Joes and the whatnot, and you're all making situations up. So in cases where you have kids involved and young children, we have a tendency as adults to kind of forget that they're also having emotional stresses as they're getting older. And a lot of adults don't realize that at the same time, with the sense of play and their emotions that they're feeding on as far as their growth spurts and things happening in the family, there's a lot happening where they can create some really playful, mischievous types of characters through looking at cartoons, reading stories. If they were reading things like, Lord of the Rings or whatnot, they're going to look at characters that they're seeing in books. Even if they were reading The Wizard of Oz and they're seeing the Wicked Witch and the monkeys flying around, you're looking at characters in children's stories, even in Mother Goose stories, if they still have that kind of thing around, that they're going to recreate in their mind with these playful characters that they're playing with. They can recreate some really, wonderful, mischievous, creative characters. And I'm sure, Gary, you with your two young girls, you can, with vivid, creative minds, they can probably come up with some good characters.
Well, yeah, and with that was YouTube.
Well, YouTube now. And now with video games, TikTok, and everything else.
TikTok. Oh my God.
They're exposed to so much now than they were 20, 30 years ago, that it's even going to be more, they're going to be more adventurous now to what they're going to come up with as far as what they're going to want to manifest if they're going to do it.
It's true. No, that's absolutely true. When you get children, when the children creates a poltergeist, it's just a lot different. It's a whole different case of scenarios. Tommy, here's the one for you. So we're going to brainstorm this one. This is a little bit different. All right. So we talk about poltergeist in humans and children. Okay. What about poltergeist in animals? What about poltergeist in dogs and cats? Now, once again, maybe a chinchilla, a bird, a family pet of some sort. We talk about the energy that we have as humans, but we kind of forget about, we do have pets in the house. And once again, the pets in the house, they're our family. They're our children. They're our, once again, extended family members. So do you think it would be possible that an animal would be able to release a poltergeist or some type of energy in a house? And if so, do you think that it would be any different than a human type energy? Like, how would we even begin to explain that one? This is just a totally different twist.
Yeah, okay, I can only use my cats for an example. Like I'll see my one cat, she'll sit on the back of the couch and she'll just look at something. But when I look in her direction, there's nothing there. Now, of course, cats have heightened senses, much more heightened than ours. They hear at a larger frequency, they see as well. If I'm correct, I believe cats can almost see a little bit behind them too. That's like a loaded thing right there, because I really don't know how to answer, because I don't know what's going through my cat's head. Is she actually seeing something? Is there like a bug? Is she seeing? I believe animals can pick up on energy sources as well and can actually see them, or at the very least sense them, but they know they're there. They don't need to go and study it to know that the thing's there. But I really don't know. I don't know what goes through a cat's head or a dog's head. My one cat rolls around on the ground all the time. I don't know what she's doing. Do cats have an imagination like we can? Maybe. But, I'm a firm believer in that everything, like we'll say, like a child says, they have heard that from somewhere. Almost like thinking like a parrot. A parrot hears what's being said and it will say it. It's not doing it on its own. Eventually, yes, you start making up your own sentences. Kids would, their own sentences, this and that, but it all stems from something they have been influenced by. So I believe if a cat, say there's a really good energy in the house and the cat's really digging it and it's rolling around on the ground, then maybe it could just be creating its own little universe. Like it's imagining maybe being pet or played with by another cat, or the owner is scratching it behind its ears. I don't know. Not a cat. And a cat ain't gonna tell. I got a cat next to me and it ain't speaking. So, I don't know. That's actually something that's very, very interesting. That just friggin' made my mind melt all over the place. But I do think that it is something that we should look into, because these animals are living things. They do have personalities. We know animals have personalities, but they can't convey to us like we're talking right now. They can't do that. So therefore, it's just open to speculation. If I'm sure there might be people with a psychic ability to actually tap into an animal's mind, not so much know what's going on, but can almost just feel like, what is the animal feeling right now? Is it a high vibration of positive energy, or is it a very low, stagnant, negative energy? I guess from there, we could actually answer that question. Can cats leave residual energy? I don't know.
Well, then Brandon asked, can animals see poltergeists that we can't see? Which I think we all three of us agree that we do. Like you kind of talked about, cats have a more heightened sense. Dogs, most animals, they'll just stare off into oblivion, and you're like, what's there? And I'm sure everybody that's watching this show that has animals has seen that in one shape or form. Same thing with little children. You see kids do the same thing. Little kids will just stare at something and you're like, yo, what are you looking at? And there's nothing there. So, we obviously assume that they're looking at something that we can't see. Will Carr brought up, hammerhead sharks can pick up magnetic fields, which we know. That's why their head is shaped in the shape of a hammer. And as they swim through the water, I watch Shark Week religiously. I'm a Shark Week guy. You see all that stuff. They're picking up all the magnetic currents of the other fish and things in the area. So that would make sense that, possibly an animal can pick up on that PK energy in one way, shape, or form. Now, Brandon brings up another good question. So, Joe, I'm going to leave this one for you because this is a good question. He's like, can poltergeist feed off of another poltergeist? So, hypothetically, we have two people in a house and they both create poltergeist activity. And or one person leaves the house and has moved out and another person has moved in the house, and that poltergeist activity that we talked about earlier that was from that person, say, is still in the house, and now we have another poltergeist activity that's now come in a house, do you think that those two can manifest with each other? Can they interact with each other? Can they form one big form of energy because it's negative energy? What are your thoughts on that? That's a good question. I got nothing on that one.
Okay. You said a couple of things, and one of the interesting things you said was negative energy. Now, we don't really know if the poltergeist is actual negative energy. We know it's energy. We know that the intent or what was manifested is mischievous, or what they used to call noisy energy. So just like when we have a circuit and we have current running through the circuit, and we have a switch at one end and another switch at another end, and we open one switch and it runs through, and then we have the other switch where it's closed. So if we open the switches, for example, or use that kind of analogy, and the person moves out and the switch is opened, that current or that poltergeist energy is going to piggyback and join the other energy to be more energy. So it's just going to combine.
A lot of energy.
It's going to be more energy. So we're not going to know whether it's negative energy, because the energy is energy, because we don't know the polarity of the energy that was created. We just know that it was noisy or active energy. So if it was bad, then we would know that these adverse things were happening in the environment. And we would have to investigate that. Is it adverse energy? Was it, quote, bad? But what is bad? It might be relative to the people that lived there or that are in that environment. To us as investigators, it may be, well, it's just the energy or the poltergeist that's doing something, that because it was created to do that. So the little kid may be creating something because they manifested that activity or that type of energy to do something. So it's relative to what was created. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit to that animal situation. And
yeah, we're going to swing right back to that. So that's great. Go right to
it. The cats, dogs, and horses actually, because they're highly spiritual animals and they're very highly psychic, and we have pet communicators that actually work with these types of animals, and they can work probably with a pet rat or any type of mammal type of species, probably even porpoises, and the dolphins and things, that, and the any type of mammal species that would be highly sensitive to maybe in bats too. But horses, cats, and dogs are the most highly psychic of the pets. They can probably harness the poltergeist activity. And you're going to see some animals at certain times go bat crap crazy, because they may be in contact with poltergeist energy that they're getting in the home or they're witnessing in the home. Go back to the Middle Ages, or around the Middle Ages, when we used to have and hear about the witch hunts. And what did the inquisitioners used to say that many of the witches used to have all the time. Any you two remember?
Cats.
They used to have a familiar.
They're familiar. Yes. Yep.
So they used to have a familiar. And the familiar not always was a cat, but what could have been a dog, could have been another animal that could have been transformed because they were a witch, and the witch or the wizard had that ability to transform these animals into a familiar. So here we go again with this poltergeist, where this individual could have had the ability to transform the energy to make the animal do something. And therefore, they call this individual a witch or a wizard or a sorcerer or a sorceress. So they could have been doing something with their mind and manifested something with their pet cat or a dog or a horse. And they were manifesting this adverse energy, and these pets would go crazy around them. Possibly made other people go crazy around them. It could have made doors open and close. So we do not know exactly what that is as far as what poltergeist energy is. So cats and dogs and horses, and maybe even what you're talking about with the sharks and their energy, I'm sure that could probably happen too. So we don't know. So therefore, it's probably possible. I've seen cats and dogs with, they look like they're mad. They really look like they're mad. And I've picked up psychically, really like something's wrong with that animal. They're not really sick, but their energy is off. And when you do like a healing on them, like using Reiki on them, some sort of an energy healing, the animal actually calms down. And it smooths their auric field or their energy field out. And you notice the change in the animal. And I know people that use Reiki healing on horses that have some sort of adverse energy, where they say the horse just is not themselves anymore. Something happened to it. And they say, what is it? So could it be poltergeist energy that somebody manifested on the pet or the horse? So I'm thinking that it's possible, because if we could do healing on the pets to smooth out their auric field and their energy field, then it's possible.
So let me put this twist. We're going to finish the show on this twist. So we're talking about highly psychic animals. All right. And I always love to push the limits a little bit. So hypothetically, if these highly psychic animals can create a poltergeist, release a poltergeist of their own, because they're highly psychic animals, do you think they can see their own poltergeist? Because once again, we're talking about animals, once again, that can see energy. Cats can see, we know cats can see energy. We know dogs can see energy. We know that they look at things. We understand that. So let's just do this twist that now a cat, a dog, a horse, whatever, an elephant, they're the smartest animals. So what can they then, because they're highly psychic, see their own poltergeist activity?
They probably can. There's probably no doubt in my mind that they probably can, because they can see spirits.
So then maybe some of these animals are actually staring at their own poltergeist activity. When we think they're staring at a spirit, they're just staring at themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I don't know. But I mean, if we're talking in these theories, that, you know, they're very highly psychic. So they see things that we don't. We already know that. Kids see things that we don't. We already know that.
They're sentient beings.
Yeah. So
they can think, they dream. We know they dream. I used to see my dogs dream. I'm sure I never had a cat, so I'm sure cats dream.
Yeah.
So while they're dreaming, they probably can create that energy and create a poltergeist.
Wow.
Yeah. All right, Paranation. Well, I mean, you heard it. So your homework tonight is, if you have any animals, observe them and see if they have any, give off any kind of poltergeist activity, and then get back to us on that. Because this is some deep conversation that, Tom, we're gonna have to like come in depth in this one, because this is a whole nother realm of. I mean, it's still energy, it's still thought form, it's still possible. There's really anything that has logical thought of any kind.
Thoughts are things.
Thought. Yeah, I mean the thought process. So we're looking at that. Like, we're looking at animals and poltergeist activity, and it's not something that we really think. I mean, fish, I guess fish would count, because if they have a thought process. So I guess what we can say, the theory would state, and we have this, if I'm being logical, the theory is going to state that anything with a thought process, whatever that thought process is, and has a form of emotion, then I would say that then it would be possible. I'm not saying it can happen. I'm saying it could be possible. Because they have that thought process. So, and then the highly psychic animals, as Joe stated, the horses, the cats, things like that, that was probably more plausible on top of that. But then we have to question, can they see their own poltergeist activity? Because we already know, and when I say we already know, we assume that we already know that they can see spirit activity. So that's a whole other realm of WTF. Like, I'm brain dead even thinking about any of that, because that's a lot.
When you
that's
guys
a lot
go
all at once.
When you go into private residence investigations, and you see that there is an animal, do you ask the client if the animal has reacted to anything that happens in the home?
I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all do.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, they're going to see things, they're going to, and 9 times out of 10, the client will already tell us. The one thing that we find about animal owners and pet owners in general, that they come very forward with their pets. They'll say, like, oh, my cat's climbing the walls, or my cat stare. The big one is, cats and dogs stare into nowhere, so they're not looking at whatever, things like that. So, I mean, that's the big one that you do here. But yeah, I mean, we do ask, and going into an investigation, we will ask those things. But a lot of times they come forward with that information. So,
and the animals,
and we watch the animals.
One of us also, and we can feel it and sense it, and they tell us psychically what kind. We can pick it up.
Well, I think the night when Joe, you came to my house.
Yep.
In Watervliet, and you had another gentleman with you as well, but I think he was doing more of like the tech work. He was sitting at the laptop. I remember I was sitting in the kitchen, and you were in my living room, and my one cat, as you were out doing your thing in the living room, I saw a few times you turned around to the cat, and Mocha is her name, was looking off, and her head was just like, was twitching, and she wasn't looking at you, and you were the only one in that space. So therefore, when you were trying to call on whatever, or just pick up whatever energy there was, I wonder if she picked up on your energy and also whatever was in the house at that point, whether it was thought form, it was an actual entity. But I just remember her kind of tweaking out a little bit. And I remember you turned around to her and you asked her if she sees something. But the cat didn't look at you. It was looking straight ahead, which would have been into my bedroom.
Yeah,
which that just, creeps me out in general.
I was picking up on what she was picking up on, and she knew that I knew what she was picking up on, that something was there. So that's why she didn't look back. She didn't respond to me because she just kept on looking. It's like, I'm not taking my eyes off of that.
Mhm. Yeah, she was intensely staring, like really, she was locked in on something. And I was just observing the whole thing, and I'm like, that's really weird because when we have the experiences, the cats don't do anything about it. They just sit there and go to sleep or look at us like,
and I had a ball with your cat, and I'm not a real cat person. I'm a dog person, and Gary knows that. But when we go to somebody's house, these cats, I have a ball with them.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Just like we had a ball with our friend at the Shaker site.
William.
Willie. And,
William.
It's just a bond that they have with you. They know that you may not like that's not your favorite animal, but they bond with you because they're communicating. They're telling you what is going on in that place. And that's what happens. They just know that, hey, this is what's happening. I'm communicating. And you become friends with that animal. You just do.
So, yeah, it was always something I wanted to ask you about. I still remember that, like just how she was just so involved in whatever was going on.
Yeah.
Whether if she was seeing, a spirit, or she was just watching you, but she wasn't just watching. I think she was really picking up, and that kind of proves that these like animals, like cats, dogs. Yeah. Even horses. I've heard many stories about horses.
Oh God, yes.
Yep. That they do have a psychic ability, and they're not marred by, it's not, if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. You shouldn't be believing in this. You shouldn't be studying this. Like things that adults hear all the time, and why there's a lot of skepticism on the paranormal because of those blocks that people who are arrogant just decide to put in front of us. Like, okay, you think you're seeing ghosts, you have a mental disease. You think you're feeling something. Well, you're feeling energy fields. It's not a ghost. But it's like those people don't know what it is either. But nobody is ever going to disprove an animal, though, because an animal is not influenced the same as we are.
There are helpers. They actually help us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, and I think an animal, it's crazy. Like I can walk in to my house and I can have a really bad day. I could be angry. I could be sad. I could be extremely exhausted. I lay down on my couch. I'll pull up YouTube. I'll watch a video. But when my cat comes up to me, and I don't think it's just because I love the animal and the attention it gives me, the affection it gives me. I really think that a cat has a natural way of healing, like how we think like Reiki healing. I think a cat kind of has that, but I don't think it purposely uses it to heal. I think it's just acting as it is. It's all the animal knows is how to be who he or she is, and in turn just makes you feel like just 150% better. I don't know. I love cats, but my cats will just come up to me and they'll just look at me, and I'll feel so much better. It's weird. I think the cats can really project energy.
It's their psychic ability, just like a dog or a horse. It's their psychic ability that does that. And I've seen that with dolphins in one of those huge aquarium type things that with their trainers. Mm-hmm. I've seen that type of a relationship with their trainers. So it's just that type of a relationship. They just learn that. It's a psychic ability, the bond that they have.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, and like Jay said, the ancient Egyptians believed cats were guardians of the spirit realm. So, at the end of the day, it's animals have always been a big part of our life in one way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
From either pets, but like from from eating them to as working animals to then becoming pets. I mean, they've always animals and humans have always, and then the riding horses. Once we started riding horses, that changed everything. So animals in general have always been a big part of human culture in one way, shape, or form. So and then modern day time, like I say, now we dress them up in clothes and costumes, and they get spoiled rotten, and they get organic food and all this stuff. So I mean, they're family members now. It's totally different now. But yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting subject. I mean, we could go on, but we have now come to the end of the paranormal show. Joe, do you have any last words? That was awesome. I mean, we ended on a subject matter
it was fun, interesting,
good.
And we could probably go on for hours.
Yeah, I mean that the animal subject in general. I mean, thinking animal can create a poltergeist is something that probably. I mean, once again, it's a possibility. That's not something that we even. I can say as an investigator, I would, even though we're talking about it right now, I'm not going to go into somebody's house and look at their beagle and be like, oh, did you create a poltergeist beagle? Did you not get your snacks today and now you're mad? But you know what I mean? We don't know. I mean, it could be an absolute possibility. So once again, like we said in the beginning of the show, that the paranormal is a journey. It's a journey for answers. It's a journey for your personal, whatever it is you want to get out of it for yourself. But it's a journey. And that's what we just did tonight. We went from your normal everyday poltergeist activity from the German noisy ghost to then the modern day poltergeist activity from people being stressed and things like that. To then we put a twist on it and then brought the animal side into it. And do animals give off poltergeist activity? Because animals are family members. Animals are family. I mean, that's just a fact. So because you're looking at different aspects of a household, when we do any kind of investigation in a house, we do have to also look at the animals because it could be a possibility because they have a thought process. And it's just another weird subject matter. It really is. But that's why we do this,
right?
Leave
our egos and our britches at the door, as you always say.
Yeah, you leave your belief britches.
Leave your mind open to any possibility. And even though I was taught a certain way or you were taught a certain way, we still have to be open that there's any possibility, but yet keep a certain semblance of what you learned and then apply logic and then take a step back.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much. So, Joe, any last words before we go?
Thanks. And everybody, stay safe, be well, and wear those masks.
Tommy? Any last words, Tommy?
Honestly, I mean, really, I've noticed about these podcasts and doing them is like you and I will talk about like a subject matter we'll come up with, and we'll maybe spend like a fraction of the time on the subject matter, and then on all these different topics that might lead into another podcast topic, and I think psychic animals, is one that we should really do. And one that I really would love to see us do is past lives.
Past life regression.
Yeah, like what is it? Is it paranormal, or is it just a phenomenon that can be proven? It's just, you don't have the answer right away on certain cases. I think that would be pretty interesting as well. But I definitely think animals, because we all have, we don't all have animals, let's be real, but the people that do, I think they would benefit greatly, and all of their answers would be, all of their questions would be answered. When they think about, like, why is my cat looking off into space? Why is my dog walking around in a circle? There's nothing there. What is going on with the animal? Maybe we could actually answer that. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many subjects after subjects, and that's what's great about these shows is, like you say, we start off on a subject matter, we get deep into the subject matter, we put the twist on the subject matter because we do outside thinking, not thinking inside the box, thinking outside the box, and that's how we come up with these ideas, possibilities, theories, subject matters. So yeah, we can definitely look further into that.
Yeah.
All right, Paranation, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. The NYBS show will be back on next week for all Footer Nation. All right. So we'll be back on with another show. We have so much to talk about. But as always, man, keep it squatchy and we'll see you out on the trail. No, just kidding. That's NYBS. Deuces, everyone.
So long.
Good night.